Shocking. Mom slapped her hand on the will. You're not seeing a dime. I smiled. Neither are you. I set down my utensils and stood up. Having you here listening to me means a lot. Watch until the end and let me know in the comments which city you're watching from. I'm really curious to see how far my story is reaching. The clatter of my knife against bone china echoed through the dining room. My mother's words hung in the air, sharp and cold like the ice in her whiskey glass. The chandelier light caught the cruel satisfaction in her eyes, a look I'd grown accustomed to over 30 years. What did you just say? I managed to keep my voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. You heard me, Lauren. Mom straightened her posture, her designer blazer without a single wrinkle. I've finalized my will. Thomas gets the company shares, Amanda receives the properties, and you. She took a deliberate sip of her drink. You won't see a penny. My brother Thomas avoided my eyes, suddenly fascinated by his medium-rare steak. Amanda, my younger sister, couldn't hide her smirk behind her wine glass. Dad had been gone 3 years now, and Mom had wasted no time reshaping the family dynamics to her liking. May I ask why? The words came out calmer than I expected. A lifetime of being the family disappointment had prepared me for this moment. Do you really need to ask? Mom's perfectly manicured finger traced the rim of her glass. Thomas has dedicated himself to the family business. Amanda has married well and maintained appropriate social connections. And you? She gestured vaguely in my direction, taking in my simple black dress and minimal jewelry. You've chosen to waste your talents on frivolous pursuits. My frivolous pursuits being an independent design studio that I'd built from nothing while refusing to join the family's real estate empire. An unforgivable sin in the Wilson household. I see. I folded my napkin carefully. And you're telling me this now? At what was supposed to be a celebration dinner for my new project. I thought it was time you understood where you stand. Mom's voice was matter of fact, as if discussing the weather rather than cutting her daughter out of her inheritance. Amanda chimed in, it's hardly a surprise, Lauren. You've never been interested in the family legacy. Thomas remained silent, shifting uncomfortably in his chair. He'd always been the weakest link in Mom's armor, occasionally showing glimmers of a conscience. I looked around the dining room, the same room where I'd spent countless dinners trying to earn a nod of approval, a smile, anything that might indicate I was worth something in this family. The oil portrait of my father loomed over the fireplace. Even in death, he seemed disappointed in me. Something inside me snapped, not in anger, but in liberation. I suddenly saw with perfect clarity what I'd always known but refused to accept. I would never be enough for them because I refused to become them. A strange calm washed over me. I even managed a small smile as I stood up, causing my mother's eyebrows to lift in surprise. She'd expected tears, pleading, or rage, her favorite reactions to provoke from me. You won't see a penny, I repeated her words. Neither will you. Mom's face hardened. What is that supposed to mean? I placed my napkin beside my half-eaten meal. It means exactly what I said. Are you threatening me? She let out a sharp laugh. With what? Your little design business barely keeps you afloat. I shouldered my bag and straightened my spine. I'm not threatening anything. I'm simply stating a fact. Lauren, don't be dramatic, Thomas finally spoke, his voice tinged with discomfort. Sit down and finish your dinner. I've had my fill, I replied, not taking my eyes off my mother. Of everything. Mom's eyes narrowed as she tried to decode my calm demeanor. She'd always been able to read me like an open book, my insecurities, my desperate need for her approval, but not tonight. Tonight, I was unreadable, and it unsettled her. Where do you think you're going? She demanded as I turned toward the door. Forward, I answered simply. As I walked out, I heard Amanda's dismissive scoff and my mother's cold command for the housekeeper to clear my place. The heavy oak door closed behind me with a satisfying thud. Outside, the cool evening air filled my lungs. I stood on the steps of the mansion I'd grown up in but never truly belonged to, feeling strangely weightless. My phone buzzed in my purse, a text from Thomas. What did you mean by that? I didn't reply. Instead, I slipped into my modest car and drove away from the estate, away from 30 years of conditional love and measured worth. What my mother didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had information that would change everything. Information that made her dramatic announcement not just cruel, but ultimately meaningless. As I merged onto the highway, I allowed myself a genuine smile for the first time that evening. My mother had just shown her final card, not realizing I was playing an entirely different game. The first memory I have of not being enough was at my 6th birthday party. Mom had organized an elaborate garden tea party with a professional photographer, custom dresses for all my school friends, and a 3-tiered cake that appeared in the local society pages the following week. I remember standing awkwardly beside my mother as she directed me into various poses, adjusting my hair, pinching my cheeks to bring color to them. "Stand up straight, Lauren," she'd hissed through her perfect smile. "And for heaven's sake, try to look happy. This isn't a funeral." But I wasn't happy. None of my real friends were there, just the daughters of Mom's social circle. I'd wanted a sleepover with pizza and movies. Instead, I got bone china teacups I was terrified of breaking. That night, after the guests had gone, I found Mom in her study looking through the Polaroid previews the photographer had left. "Mom, did you like my party?" I'd asked, still hoping for some warmth, some acknowledgement. She'd barely looked up. "Your posture was terrible in most of these. We'll have to work on that." Not, "Yes, honey, it was wonderful," or "Did you have fun?" Just criticism, wrapped in social perfectionism. 2 weeks later, Michael was born. I sat in my tiny apartment kitchen 24 years later, nursing a glass of wine and scrolling through the relentless text messages from Thomas. He'd sent 8 since I'd left the dinner last night, each more urgent than the last. "Mom is furious." "What did you mean last night?" "Call me, Lauren. This is serious. Do you know something about the company?" I put my phone down without responding. Let them stew in uncertainty for a while. My apartment was the antithesis of my mother's mansion, small, filled with mismatched furniture and art I'd collected from local creators. Every piece had a story, a memory attached. Nothing was there for show or status. Mom had visited exactly once, 3 years ago after Dad's funeral, and had left after 20 uncomfortable minutes, claiming that the cluttered space gave her a headache. The only item of real value I owned was hanging on my bedroom wall, a small, original Rothko sketch that Dad had given me on my 16th birthday. Our secret, he'd whispered, knowing Mom would disapprove of him wasting a valuable piece on me rather than adding it to their official collection. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Michael. "We need to talk. Coffee at Westlake Brew in an hour?" I hesitated. Michael was different from Thomas and Amanda. While they'd stepped perfectly into the roles Mom had designated for them, Michael had always been the wild card. The golden boy who could do no wrong despite doing everything wrong. "Fine. 1 hour." I texted back. Michael was already there when I arrived, 2 coffees on the table, mine exactly how I liked it, with oat milk and cinnamon. Despite everything, the gesture touched me. "You look like shit," he said by way of greeting, his smile taking the sting out of his words. "Thanks. You too." I sat down across from him, noting the dark circles under his eyes and the slight rumple in his otherwise immaculate button-down. Michael had always been the handsome one, effortlessly charming with our father's strong jawline and our mother's calculating eyes. "So, Mom called me last night." "She was." He paused, searching for the right word, rattled. "Rattled?" I raised an eyebrow. I don't think I've ever seen Mom rattled. "Well, she was. Said you made some cryptic comment and stormed out." He studied me over his coffee cup. "Want to tell me what's going on?" I shrugged. "She told me I'm cut out of the will." I left. Not much to tell. Michael's expression shifted to genuine surprise. "She actually went through with that?" "Jesus, Lauren, I'm sorry. Are you? Because from what I understand, you've known about this for months. His eyes widened slightly, confirmation enough. Who told you that? Does it matter? I took a sip of my coffee, grateful for its warmth. The point is, you knew Mom was planning to cut me out completely, and you didn't think to warn me. Michael had the decency to look ashamed. I thought she was bluffing. Or that she'd change her mind. You know how she gets these ideas and then carries them out exactly as threatened. I finished for him. When has Mom ever bluffed about anything? He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, messing it up in a way that would have sent Mom into a tailspin. Fair point. I should have told you. I'm sorry. The thing about Michael was that his apologies always sounded sincere. Even when they weren't. What did you mean, though? He pressed. When you said she wouldn't see a penny either? I studied my brother's face, wondering how much he already knew. Michael had always been Mom's favorite, the son who could wrap her around his finger with a smile, who got away with everything from crashed cars to failed college courses with barely a reprimand. He'd never felt the sting of her disapproval the way I had. The way Thomas had, until he'd molded himself into exactly what she wanted. Michael, when was the last time you looked at the company's financial reports? The real ones, not the ones Mom shows at family meetings. His brow furrowed. What are you talking about? The company is in trouble. Serious trouble. That's impossible. We just expanded into the Seattle market. The Westlake project is built on sand. I cut him off. Literally and figuratively. He stared at me, waiting for me to laugh, to say I was joking. When I didn't, something shifted in his expression. For the first time in years, I saw my brother, really saw him, without the charm and deflection. How do you know this? He asked quietly. I pulled out my phone and slid it across the table, open to an email from Dad's old friend at the bank. Because unlike you, Thomas, and Amanda, I actually paid attention to what Dad was trying to teach us. As Michael read, his face drained of color. Our entire family legacy, the Wilson empire that our mother wielded like a weapon, was crumbling from within. And no one but me had noticed. Michael stared at my phone, scrolling through the emails with trembling fingers. His face had gone from shock to disbelief to something I rarely saw in him, genuine fear. This can't be right, he whispered, more to himself than to me. The Westlake project is our flagship. It's supposed to be worth millions. It would be, I said, taking my phone back, if the foundation wasn't compromised. If the materials used weren't substandard. If the environmental impact report hadn't been falsified. His eyes snapped to mine. Falsified? Lauren, that's a serious accusation. It's not an accusation. It's a fact. I pulled up another email. Dad's friend at the environmental agency flagged it months ago. The site is built on unstable ground, and the company that signed off on the safety reports? A shell corporation owned by Greger Investments. Mom's old college friend, Michael muttered, connecting the dots. Exactly. She cut corners to save money, Michael. Big corners. He shook his head. But Mom wouldn't, she's always been obsessed with the Wilson reputation. Which is exactly why she covered it up instead of fixing the problems. I leaned forward. The first units go on sale next month. What happens when those multi-million-dollar condos start showing cracks in the foundation? When the buyers discover their luxury views come with toxic groundwater? Michael pushed his coffee away untouched. It'll destroy us. Not just financially, but everything Mom cares about, our standing, our reputation. Now you understand what I meant at dinner. The bustling coffee shop continued around us, oblivious to the bomb that had just detonated at our table. A barista called out drink orders. A couple at the next table laughed over some private joke. Does Thomas know? Michael finally asked. No. He's too busy being Mom's perfect soldier to question her decisions. And Amanda? I snorted. Please. Amanda wouldn't care if the building was made of matchsticks as long as her trust fund payments cleared. Michael ran both hands through his hair, completely ruining his carefully styled look. What are you going to do with this information? The question hung between us. In truth, I wasn't entirely sure. I had discovered the problems with the Westlake project 3 weeks ago, and since then, I'd been weighing my options. Exposing my mother would bring down the company, and possibly result in criminal charges. Staying silent would make me complicit. I don't know yet, I admitted. I was going to talk to Mom privately, give her a chance to address it before the units went on sale. But after last night, she pushed you too far, Michael finished for me. It wasn't a question. My phone buzzed with an incoming call. A number I didn't recognize. I was about to decline it when Michael glanced at the screen and his eyes widened. That's Julian Parker, he said urgently. Who? Julian Parker. From Parker Investments? They're one of the biggest development firms on the West Coast. I answered warily. Hello? Is this Lauren Wilson? A deep, confident voice came through the speaker. Yes, this is she. Ms. Wilson, this is Julian Parker. I apologize for calling out of the blue, but I was hoping to set up a meeting with you at your earliest convenience. I frowned. Regarding what, exactly? I've been following your design work for some time. Your sustainable approach and focus on community integration is exactly what we're looking for in our new development division. I'd like to discuss a potential collaboration. I nearly dropped my phone. Julian Parker, apparently a major player in real estate development, had been following my work. The small commercial spaces and community centers I designed were hardly on the radar of major investors. I'm flattered, Mr. Parker, but I think you might be mistaking me for someone else. My projects are relatively small scale. On the contrary, Ms. Wilson. It's precisely your human-centered approach that interests us. The industry is changing. Consumers want developments that enhance communities rather than just extracting value from them. Your vision aligns perfectly with our new direction. Michael was staring at me intently, clearly able to hear Parker's side of the conversation. I see, I managed. When would you like to meet? Tomorrow, if possible. My office at 10 a.m.? I'll text you the address. I'll be there. After hanging up, I looked at Michael in disbelief. Julian Parker wants to meet with me. This is huge, Lauren. Michael's expression was a mix of awe and calculation. Parker Investments is exactly what the Wilson Group needs right now, a capital infusion from a legitimate source. If you could convince him to partner with us instead. Of course. Even now, Michael's first thought was how this could benefit the family business. I'm not leveraging this opportunity to save Mom's reputation, I said firmly. It's not just about Mom, Michael argued. It's about the employees who'll lose jobs if the company tanks. It's about Dad's legacy. The mention of our father hit me harder than I wanted to admit. Would Dad have wanted me to protect the company, even after how they'd treated me? Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text. Julian Parker had sent the meeting details, along with a link to an article about the Westlake project. Interesting timing, I murmured. What do you mean? Michael leaned forward. I turned my phone toward him, showing Parker's text. Either this is an incredible coincidence, or Julian Parker knows something about Westlake that we don't. Julian Parker's office occupied the entire top floor of a gleaming downtown skyscraper, the kind of sleek, modern building that my mother would approve of, though I noticed it had been designed with sustainable features that she would consider unnecessarily expensive. His assistant, a poised woman in her 50s, led me through a series of open workspaces where diverse teams hunched over blueprints and 3D models. Unlike the stuffy, hierarchical atmosphere of the Wilson Group offices, Parker Investments hummed with collaborative energy. Ms. Wilson, Julian Parker rose from behind his desk as I entered. He was younger than I expected, early 40s perhaps, with intelligent eyes and an understated confidence that immediately put me at ease. Thank you for coming on such short notice. We shook hands, and he gestured for me to take a seat on a modern but surprisingly comfortable chair across from his desk. I have to admit, Mr. Parker, I'm still not entirely sure why I'm here. He smiled. Direct. I appreciate that. He tapped a tablet on his desk, and images of my design work appeared on the wall screen behind him. These are your projects from the last 3 years. The Riverfront Community Center. The Pine Hill Artisan Market. The West Side Sustainable Housing Units. I nodded, surprised and somewhat flattered that he'd compiled such a comprehensive portfolio of my work. What do they have in common? He asked. They're small scale? He laughed. Besides that. I considered the question. They all prioritize community integration. Sustainable materials. Spaces designed for human interaction rather than just efficiency or aesthetics. Exactly. Julian leaned forward. Ms. Wilson. Lauren, please. Lauren. The development industry is at a crossroads. For decades, it's been about maximizing profit per square foot with little regard for community impact or environmental sustainability. But the market is changing. Millennials and Gen Z want to live and work in spaces that align with their values. They're willing to pay a premium for it. I raised an eyebrow. And you think my designs can help you tap into that market? I know they can. But I'm not just looking to appropriate your aesthetic. I want you to lead our new Sustainable Development Division. Full creative control. A substantial budget. A team of your choosing. My heart raced. This was the kind of opportunity I'd dreamed of, the chance to implement my vision at a scale that could actually make a difference. But something wasn't adding up. Why me? There are larger firms with more established sustainable design practices. Julian's expression shifted slightly. Those firms are constrained by their existing structures and relationships. You're an independent outlier with vision and integrity. And he hesitated, you understand the Wilson Group from the inside. And there it was. I felt a chill despite the perfectly regulated office temperature. So this is about my family's company. Julian didn't deny it. The Westlake project is a disaster waiting to happen. Your mother cut corners that shouldn't have been cut. How do you know that? I have my sources. His eyes met mine. The same ones that probably informed you. I recalled the text he'd sent after our call yesterday, with the link to the Westlake article. You knew I had this information before you called me. He nodded. I did. What exactly are you proposing, Mr. Parker? Julian, please. He stood and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. I'm proposing a partnership. Parker Investments acquires the Wilson Group. My mother would never sell, I interrupted. She might, if the alternative is bankruptcy and possible criminal charges. His voice was matter-of-fact, not threatening. We'd retain most of the employees, restructure the management, and implement proper quality and safety standards. The Wilson name would remain on select legacy projects. And my role in all this? You'd lead the new sustainable division, completely separate from the Wilson assets. Your vision, your team, your projects. No interference. My mind raced. This was either the opportunity of a lifetime or an elaborate revenge scheme against my mother. Possibly both. What do you get out of this arrangement? I asked. Julian smiled, appreciating my directness again. The Wilson Group, despite its current issues, has valuable land holdings and development rights. And your design vision gives us entry into a market segment we've been trying to penetrate for years. I stood up, needing to move. I need time to think about this. Of course. But not too much time. The Westlake units go on sale in 3 weeks. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. A text from Michael, Mom called emergency family meeting tonight. 7 p.m. Says it's about you. I showed Julian the message. Interesting timing, he remarked, echoing my words from yesterday. She doesn't know what I know, I said, half to myself. This has to be about something else. Julian's assistant appeared at the door. Mr. Parker, your next appointment is here. He nodded, then turned back to me. Think it over, Lauren. My offer stands regardless of what happens with your family tonight. As I left the Parker Investments building, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Thomas. Mom's furious. What did you do? I didn't bother responding. Instead, I called the one person who might have some insight. Michael, it's me. What's going on? His voice was tense. Mom received a call from Julian Parker's office this morning. Apparently, someone tipped him off about problems with the Westlake project. She thinks it was you. My blood ran cold. I didn't tell him anything he didn't already know. So you did meet with him? Michael sounded betrayed. Yes, but not to discuss Westlake. He offered me a job. A long pause. Lauren, you need to be careful tonight. Mom is on the warpath. When isn't she? I tried to sound flippant, but my stomach tightened with anxiety. This is different. She's talking about legal action if you've breached confidentiality. I almost laughed. I'm not even an employee of the Wilson Group. What confidentiality? Just, be prepared, okay? As I hung up, I realized I was standing in front of the old community center I'd redesigned 3 years ago, my first solo project after leaving the safety net of my previous firm. I remembered how proud I'd been of the space, with its communal gardens and flexible gathering areas. My mother had called it a glorified recreation room when I'd invited the family to the opening. Now Julian Parker was offering me the chance to create spaces like this on a much larger scale. All I had to do was help him acquire my family's company, the company that had never wanted me, that had just officially cut me out. It should have been an easy decision. So why did it feel like I was standing on the edge of a cliff? I arrived at my mother's house exactly at 7 p.m. Not early, not late. On her terms, but not apologetic. Jenkins, the family butler who had known me since I was in pigtails, opened the door with a sympathetic smile. They're in the main study, Miss Lauren. Is it that bad, Jenkins? I asked quietly. His eyes darted toward the study door. I've taken the liberty of removing the breakables. Great. Mom was in destroyer mode. The study, my father's old domain, felt wrong with my mother behind his desk. Thomas and Amanda sat in matching armchairs like obedient soldiers, while Michael paced by the window. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. So nice of you to join us, Mom said, her voice arctic. I believe you have some explaining to do. I remained standing. About? Don't play dumb, Lauren. It doesn't suit you. She slapped a folder onto the desk. Julian Parker contacted me today with an acquisition offer for the Wilson Group. Apparently, he's concerned about structural issues with the Westlake project. I kept my face neutral. And you think I told him about those issues? Did you? No. Technically true. Parker had known before I met him. Thomas leaned forward. Then how did he know? Those reports are confidential. Maybe because they're filed with the city planning office? I suggested. Public records, if you know where to look. Amanda snorted. Since when do you know anything about development regulations? Since Dad taught me, not that any of you were paying attention. I turned to my mother. The Westlake Foundation issues aren't a secret to anyone who bothers to check the geological surveys. The real question is why you proceeded anyway. Mom's eyes narrowed to slits. You ungrateful little. Is it true? Michael interrupted, addressing our mother directly. Did you know about the foundation problems? The room fell silent. Michael questioning Mom was unprecedented. She recovered quickly. Of course I knew. We implemented appropriate mitigation measures. No, you didn't, I said quietly. You falsified the environmental impact report and used substandard materials. The building isn't safe. Thomas stood up, his lawyer instincts kicking in. You need to stop talking right now. These accusations could constitute slander. It's not slander if it's true. I pulled out my phone and brought up the files I'd compiled. Geological survey from last year. Materials inspection report. And an analysis from Dad's old friend at the engineering firm, the one you fired after he raised concerns. I placed my phone on the desk, watching as my mother's perfectly composed facade began to crack. She didn't touch the phone, but her eyes flicked over the screen, recognizing the documents. This is absurd, Amanda declared. Mom would never. Be quiet, Amanda, Mother snapped. The uncharacteristic sharpness toward her favorite daughter silenced the room. Michael moved beside me, a subtle show of support I hadn't expected. Mom, if this is true, we need to halt the sales. And lose everything, she hissed. Do you have any idea what we've invested in Westlake? It would bankrupt us. Better bankrupt than responsible for deaths when the building fails, I countered. Mother's laugh was hollow. Always so dramatic, Lauren. The building isn't going to collapse. Maybe not today or tomorrow. But the first major earthquake? The first heavy rain season with that compromised drainage system? I shook my head. You're gambling with people's lives. For a moment, I glimpsed something in her eyes, not remorse, exactly, but the faintest recognition that she'd crossed a line. It vanished quickly. And your solution is to sell us out to Julian Parker? She asked coldly. I didn't go to Parker. He came to me. With a job offer, I hear. How convenient. Her voice dripped with disdain. Always looking out for yourself first. Michael stepped forward. That's not fair. Lauren has done nothing but support this family, even when you pushed her away. Support? Mother's eyes widened. She abandoned the family business to play with her little design projects. And now she's feeding information to our competitors. I'd spent 30 years absorbing blows like this. Usually, I'd flinch, retreat, try to explain myself. Not tonight. I didn't abandon anything, I said, my voice steady. You drove me out because I questioned your methods. Because I wanted to build developments that served communities rather than exploiting them. Spare me your self-righteous. Dad agreed with me. The words hung in the air. Mom's face went still. What did you say? Thomas asked. I turned to him. Dad agreed with my vision. He was planning to create a sustainable division for me to lead before he died. Why do you think he left me that Rothko? It wasn't just a sentimental gift, it was seed funding. He knew Mom would try to block me. Mother stood abruptly. Your father would never undermine me like that. He wasn't undermining you. He was trying to save you from yourself. I stepped closer to the desk. He saw where the industry was headed. He knew your approach was becoming obsolete. Environmentally, ethically, financially. For the first time in my life, I saw uncertainty in my mother's eyes. A hairline crack in her armor of absolute conviction. Thomas cleared his throat. If what Lauren is saying about Westlake is true, we have a legal obligation to disclose it. And destroy everything your father built? Mother demanded. Dad built a company with integrity, I replied. You're the one destroying it. The silence that followed was deafening. My heart hammered in my chest, but I didn't regret a single word. 30 years of silent compliance had ended in this moment. Finally, Mother spoke, her voice low and dangerous. Get out of my house. Gladly. I turned to leave, then stopped. Parker's offer is legitimate. He'd keep most of the employees, maintain Dad's legacy projects. It's a better end than what's coming if you proceed with Westlake. We don't need your charity solutions, she spat. I looked at each of my siblings, Thomas, conflicted, Amanda, hostile, Michael, troubled but thoughtful. Think carefully about where you stand, I told them. Because when this falls apart, you'll all go down with her. As I left the study, I heard Michael call my name, but I didn't stop. I'd said what needed to be said. For once in my life, I'd spoken the full, unvarnished truth to my family. It felt like freedom. 3 weeks passed in silence. No calls from my mother. No texts from Amanda. Even Thomas, the family mediator, kept his distance. Only Michael reached out, with brief updates that revealed the chaos unfolding at Wilson Group. Mom's refusing to delay the Westlake sales, he texted 2 days after our confrontation. Board meeting was a disaster. A week later, Thomas finally reviewed the documents. He's freaking out about liability. And then, most surprisingly, Amanda found the original reports in Mom's files. She's actually upset. Never seen her like this. I kept my responses short, focused on facts rather than emotions. Inside, though, I was a storm of conflicting feelings: vindication, sadness, worry, and a strange sense of grief for the family we could have been. Meanwhile, I threw myself into planning for my new role at Parker Investments. Julian had been true to his word, giving me complete freedom to design the Sustainable Development Division from the ground up. I'd spent days interviewing potential team members, reviewing potential projects, and drafting a vision statement that made my heart race with possibility. Then the news broke. Wilson Group halts Westlake project amid safety concerns, screamed the business section headline. The article detailed anonymous whistleblower reports about falsified safety documents and substandard materials. The company's stock plummeted 40% in a single day. My phone exploded with notifications. Former colleagues asking if I knew what was happening. Friends checking if I was okay. And finally, a text from Michael: "Mom's called an emergency board meeting. You should be here." I nearly ignored it. What was the point? I'd made my position clear, and Mother had made hers. But something in Michael's follow-up message changed my mind. "She asked for you specifically. Said she needs your help." Elizabeth Wilson had never, in 30 years, admitted to needing anyone's help, least of all mine. The Wilson Group headquarters felt like a war zone when I arrived. Staff huddled in corners, whispering anxiously. The receptionist's eyes widened when she saw me, quickly ushering me toward the executive floor without the usual security protocols. The boardroom fell silent as I entered. Thomas sat with his head in his hands. Amanda looked like she hadn't slept in days, her usual perfect appearance noticeably disheveled. Michael gave me a small nod of encouragement. And at the head of the table, my mother, smaller somehow, diminished, the imperious queen suddenly mortal. "Lauren," she said, her voice lacking its usual sharp edge. "Thank you for coming." I took an empty seat, acutely aware of the board members' eyes on me. "Michael said you needed my help." She nodded, uncharacteristically direct. "The company is facing bankruptcy. The Westlake revelations have triggered a crisis of confidence. Investors are pulling out. Clients are canceling contracts. I assume you've halted sales of the Westlake units?" "Yes," Thomas interjected. "And we've initiated a complete structural review of all ongoing projects." I looked around the table. "So what exactly do you want from me?" Mother took a deep breath. "Julian Parker's offer. We'd like you to help us negotiate terms." The request hung in the air, weighted with decades of rejection and dismissal. The irony wasn't lost on me. After years of treating my ideas as worthless, my mother was asking me to save the company using the very connection she'd accused me of betraying them for. Why should I? I asked, the question directed not just at my mother but at the entire board. An uncomfortable silence followed. Then, to my surprise, Amanda spoke up. "Because you were right." Her voice cracked slightly. "About everything. About Westlake. About the direction of the industry. About what Dad would have wanted." I searched her face for signs of manipulation but found only exhaustion and genuine remorse. Thomas nodded in agreement. "We should have listened to you years ago, Lauren. Instead, we pushed you out." My mother's hands were clasped tightly on the table, her knuckles white. I was wrong, she said quietly. About many things. The admission, so simple yet so monumental, nearly knocked the wind out of me. Elizabeth Wilson didn't admit mistakes. Ever. Parker's original offer won't stand, I said carefully. Not with the Westlake issues public now. We know, Michael replied. But he still wants your vision. That's our leverage. I considered my options. I could walk away, let the Wilson Group collapse under the weight of my mother's mistakes. After how they'd treated me, no one would blame me. But this wasn't just about my mother anymore. It was about the hundreds of employees who'd lose their jobs. About my father's legacy. About the opportunity to transform a company from within, to build something that would outlast all of us. I'll talk to Julian, I finally said. But I have conditions. Mother nodded. Name them. I want full creative control over all future projects. A seat on the board. And a division dedicated to sustainable development, with the team and budget I specify. Thomas started to object, but Mother held up her hand. Done. I'm not finished, I continued. The company needs to establish a foundation for community investment in every neighborhood where we build. Real investment, not just PR gestures. That will cut into profits, one board member objected. It will secure our future, I countered. This isn't charity. It's business evolution. Mother studied me for a long moment, seeing me, truly seeing me, perhaps for the first time. Your father would be proud of you, she said softly. The words I'd waited a lifetime to hear, delivered only after catastrophe. They should have felt hollow, but instead, they unlocked something in my chest, not forgiveness, exactly, but the possibility of it. I'll call Julian today, I said, rising from my seat. But make no mistake, I'm not doing this to save you. I'm doing it to build something better. 6 months later, I stood on the rooftop garden of our first completed project under the restructured Wilson Parker Group. What had once been an abandoned warehouse was now a mixed-use development with affordable housing units, community spaces, and green technology integrated throughout. Michael joined me, handing me a glass of champagne. Not bad for your first major project. I smiled, looking out over the city. Dad would have loved it. He would, Michael agreed. Mom does too, though she'd never admit it. Our mother had stepped down as CEO but remained on the board, where she'd become, surprisingly, one of my strongest advocates once she saw the positive response to our new direction. Did you ever think we'd end up here? Michael asked. Working together, I mean. I shook my head. Never. But I never thought Mom would change either. She didn't, not really, he said thoughtfully. She still cares about the same things, success, legacy, family reputation. She just finally realized that your vision serves those goals better than her old methods. The elevator doors opened, and Thomas emerged with a group of potential investors. He caught my eye and nodded respectfully, our new normal. Behind him, Amanda was actually smiling, pointing out features of the garden to an impressed-looking client. We weren't a perfect family. The wounds ran too deep for that. But we'd found a way forward that honored our father's legacy while creating something new, something with integrity at its foundation. As the sun set over the city, I thought about that dinner 6 months ago, when my mother had slammed her hand on the table and declared I wouldn't see a penny of my inheritance. She'd been right, in a way. I hadn't inherited money or property. I'd inherited something far more valuable, the chance to build a legacy of my own, on my own terms. One that would last long after the money was gone. And that was worth more than any fortune she could have left me.